podcast Chat2Amani, #BrainBabble, a little offshoot to our Fight for Amani Instagram page. I hope to document and share the highs and the lows and everything in between of my life since being diagnosed with incurable brain cancer. So a lot of people have asked me kind of whether I experienced any symptoms before my birthday where I fell ill that might have indicated that there was something seriously wrong with my health. And the truth of the matter is, the week prior, all I was really experiencing was a couple of mild headaches, but I call them background headaches because it wasn't even really bad enough for me to take paracetamol. I was still going to placement, and I thought maybe I was just a bit tired. I was fasting as well, so I didn't really think anything of it. But then I went to bed one night after suhoor, which is the morning kind of meal that you eat before the fast starts. And I got into bed and, I went to sleep. And then I got up at some point and I turned around and picked up my phone. And the brightness was really bright. And then suddenly I had these almost fireworks in my vision. And I just quickly closed my eyes because I thought, this is a bit strange. And after a little while it kind of faded. But then I felt really confused. I had this feeling that I was back in Leicester in my uni accommodation, but I 100% knew that I wasn't. So I knew that I was at home, but when I was looking around, I was I just felt like I was there. But it kind of passed. I got up and I realised I couldn't really see everything, but it was dark, so I just was like, I'm just going to go back to sleep, nap it off. I think the next evening around the time I was due to break my fast, we'd all sat down as a family to eat, and then afterwards we went to pray. And then during prayer I had the same kind of thing that happened. I had these flashing lights in my vision, but it wasn't until we all sat down to fully eat a meal that I realised how much of my vision I'd actually lost. But I was sat at the table, and normally I can see my whole family. There's only 5 of us, but I had complete tunnel vision, so I was like, I can't see Dad. I felt a bit panicky and sick, and then I did actually throw up. It only lasted around an hour, so I felt a bit rough, but I just kind of went to sleep it off. So it was the day of my birthday, and I actually remember feeling a lot better, and I was still adamant to celebrate, but because of lockdown, the only 2 friends I had were my sisters. So we didn't really have any plans, but of course, like the typical girls we are, we just were like, we'll get ready for absolutely no reason, take loads of pictures. We were all ready for our close-ups. We went downstairs, and then I wasn't feeling well again, so I just laid down. I pretty much just unfolded around me. I was a star of the show, but I had literally no idea what was going on. So I thought it'd probably be best to hear from some of my family members. So it's probably only been in the last couple of months that I've kind of had the courage to sit down with family members and try and fill in those missing gaps. Before, I just didn't really want to know, and the best way for me to cope, I felt like, was just to block it out and pretend it never really happened. But facts are better than fiction, so talking to my family has helped me differentiate between the two. So what do you remember from the day then?
Well, I just remember obviously it was your birthday, and it was our first family birthday in lockdown, so I think we sort of were trying to make a bit more of an effort than usual. I'd baked a chocolate birthday cake for you. We'd decorated the fireplace, and I remember you actually saying to me that you actually felt a lot better than you had been feeling the previous week. You said you weren't feeling well again. You were saying that you were getting the flashing in your eyes, and you were feeling sick. And you were actually fasting that day because it was Ramadan. We did try and encourage you to stop the fast, but you were saying, look, it's only an hour or so left, so you really wanted to carry on. You said, go and lay down, and then wake up when it's time to break our fast. You can eat, and hopefully you feel better once when you've got something in your stomach. She at that time was sleeping downstairs, so we were in the lounge downstairs, and because she's feeling sick, we put a bucket, a bin by her bed, and then the next thing I was sitting in the lounge, and I just heard the bin kick over, and I don't know what it was. I actually just thought that she'd probably been sick, but I just bolt upright and just ran. I remember my phone dropping on the floor, and I just ran into Amani's bedroom, thinking, expecting to see that she was being sick. But what I saw was Amani just sort of her legs hanging off the bed. She was face down, and her head and her legs hanging off the bed, and I just, couldn't work out what was happening. And as I got closer, I realised that Mani was actually in the middle of a seizure.
And Mum started screaming that Amani was having a fit, and then I remember Rakaya started screaming.
Literally, we're just holding Amani on the bed.
She must have somehow ended up on her front, so she was basically suffocating herself.
Just the two of us, me and Rakaya, to try and keep her on the bed, weren't we? So we were just our whole body weight over on Amani. Malia, my youngest, ran off to get her dad.
I went straight upstairs because Dad was upstairs, and I got Dad.
Yeah, I was upstairs in the bathroom, getting ready for prayer and stuff, and I heard this racket, and because the bathroom window was open, I just saw his kids making a lot of noise on the street, and so I just ignored it. And Malia came upstairs and started banging on the door and said Amani's having a fit. So I shot out of the bathroom, came downstairs.
Yeah, even Dad, when he came down to try and turn her around, it was so hard for him to even turn around because she was such a dead weight. All her muscles had tensed up from having a seizure.
I remember somebody saying she's not breathing, and I was just having this sort of utter dread. And then we just screamed to each other to call the paramedics. And then it was just utter confusion.
And I started ringing the ambulance, but everything was a bit of a blur, and everyone was calling the ambulance at the same time.
Rakaya started to call the paramedics from her own mobile phone, and Malia started to call the paramedics from her mobile phone. One of the calls was just literally put to the side in the confusion, so I was just in an utter panic, and he was having to tell me off because I just couldn't remember things. I was just breathless. I remember being so breathless and just panicking, and he was just shouting at me to calm down. But my little Malia, she was just an absolute star.
I was on the phone to the ambulance, and they were asking all of the questions about her birthday and about her medical history, and asking me to stay on the phone.
It took a while till we realised that actually we were both being asked the same questions by separate paramedics at the same time.
The ambulance were asking me to say now every time she took a breath in. It was really irregular.
Her breathing seemed laboured, but then it became more normal. I could see blood around her mouth, and I was a bit confused as to what had happened there, and really concerned, and just stayed with her really until the ambulance came.
Started to wake up. She was so confused. She was trying to get away. She started puking.
See, these sort of things, it feels like forever for the paramedics to turn up.
The paramedics didn't seem too concerned. They did vital checks. Amani had stopped having her seizure by then. She was very confused, didn't know what was going on. So they'd only let one of us go because of COVID, so Yasmin went in the ambulance. I stayed with the other two, who were still a bit hysterical.
So they were because she came round in the ambulance and she was talking and making jokes like how Amani is,
asking me the standard ones like my name, and then they asked who the Prime Minister was, and of course I had to say Boris Johnson, unfortunately, which got a few giggles.
Yeah, and I mean, I was obviously really encouraged by that because I was thinking, obviously it was horrible to see Amani having the seizure, but then when she just was, cracking her jokes like normal, I was thinking, oh, this is good. So we just set off. Oh, actually, before we set off, then we got a knock on the door, and the police had turned up because I think like I said, one of the phones ended up being left on the side. The police had heard all this screaming and whatever, and was coming to check that everything was okay. So they sort of made sure that they were okay, that it was just a medical emergency and there was nothing untoward going on.
Literally, every kind of emergency service turned up. I'm sure if we were near the sea, the Coast Guard would have come too.
Yeah, but I mean, that just shows the panic of it all.
Yeah, the chaos, basically.
Yeah. We set off, and I'm literally sure, I mean, I don't know because I was in the back, but I think we only just got to the side road, and Amani just started going into another seizure, and I just remember that was just so horrific to see, because I think the first one, she was face down, but this other one, obviously she was doing having the seizure towards me, and just to see your daughter sort of just not herself and just contorted and twisted, and her facial expressions and everything. I just remember it just being so scary. And then after they stopped the ambulance, and basically they just wait for it to pass. And then they decided to put the blue lights on, and I remember just stroking her hair and just saying prayers in her ears and just trying to think of something that maybe she can hear me and trying to console her. But I just remember my legs were just shaking. I just had no control of my body. Was just in oh dear, I'm getting a bit upset.
I'm getting upset too.
Oh dear.
Oh god.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just in utter. My whole body was just shaking because I was just so scared of what was happening to my daughter. And it seemed like absolutely forever, even though we were blue lights and I'm sure going really really fast. It just still felt like forever. So we got to the hospital eventually, and then they just basically they wheeled her in. And again, it was a pandemic, so they said no, you're not allowed in. The irony of it all that 22 years ago I was in hospital welcoming Marnie into the world, and just in such happy circumstances. And 22 years down the line, I'm here, wheeling my unconscious daughter into the into A&E, and I was just basically told to go home.
And it wasn't very long before Yasmin returned home. I'm guessing probably around 10ish, maybe a bit later. We got a phone call. One of you needs to come in. To be honest, we both knew something wasn't right. They wouldn't tell us on the phone. Yasmin went off, and we carried on waiting with the other girls.
Mum and Dad weren't saying anything to us. They weren't saying like it's bad news or anything. I was just thinking the worst. I was like, oh my god, like this is like really serious. Like I could tell that something was wrong. They just didn't want to tell us.
So we went back to the hospital. I found Amani. She was awake. She was conscious by then, but she just wasn't herself. She, very very dazed. And very quickly the doctor came up, and he said, sorry to let you know that we found a tumour. And I remember him just standing there, and he wasn't really saying any much more. And I wasn't really, I wasn't doing that reaction that you see in the, I don't know, A&E or in the dramas. I wasn't crying or wailing or whatever. I just remember just being I didn't know what to say or what to do or what you're supposed to do. I didn't know what that meant. I looked to Amani.
I can't remember being told. In fact, when we've discussed it at home privately, we've kind of gone back and forth, and I was like, no one told me that I was there when Mum found out. So we found out at the same time, but I just think, again, I didn't process it at all.
No, Yasmin called a bit later saying it's a brain tumour. At that moment, it hadn't sunk in. I just thought, tumour, so it must be able to be removed. And, again, we're a bit in shock, really.
And Dad came downstairs. We were all so exhausted, and he stood there, and we knew that we were going to get bad news from the look on Dad's face. And he told us that they found something on the brain scan, that she's got a brain tumour. And Dad just broke down crying. And I had no clue what a brain tumour was at that point. I didn't even know what it meant. But me and Raquel, we just sat next to my dad and we were hugging him. And we were all just crying.
And I think from what I remember, I waited for Yasmin to come home.
They did allow me up to the ward with Amani, and I sat with her, and they said to Amani, look, I'm going to have to go. Thinking to myself that I don't know when I'm going to see Amani again, because at that stage I didn't know how they treat a brain tumour. They kept on saying that they were going to take her to Queen Square, and they were talking about having brain surgery and all this sort of stuff, and I was just thinking, surely it takes forever to get over brain surgery. So I literally was going home thinking I might not see Amani for a good couple of months. So obviously that was just the hardest thing to do. And I remember getting home, and just it was then when I sort of broke down when I got home, and just when you have time to sort of catch your breath and thinking, just the atmosphere in the house was just eerily just quiet.
Even now, kind of repeatedly hearing what happened, it brings back a lot of anxiety. I wasn't awake for most of it, so that might explain why there's not much chatting from Amani in this episode. But also just repeatedly hearing the same thing over and over, it does really make me anxious even now, even though it's something that's, almost a year ago. The most traumatic part of the whole day was just the fact that it was so out of the blue, so sudden, and just seemed to come from nowhere. But sometimes I think it is important to step back and kind of see that maybe it was a blessing in disguise because of the COVID situation and the pandemic. If it hadn't happened in such a unexpected manner, I just don't think I ever would have been taken in or treated or seen. Because if I'd rung my doctor and said, I'm having a few mild headaches, I've vomited once or twice, I just think it would have been pushed to the back, and I wouldn't have had the scan, and I wouldn't have had known. And with the tumour that I have, that would have been so deadly. So as horrible as it was, if that was the only way for me to be seen and for that scan to be done as quickly as it was, then maybe it is something that we just have to be thankful for. So obviously I just shared my personal experiences and symptoms that I've had, but I don't want to scare anyone. It doesn't mean every time you have a mild headache that you have a brain tumour. But obviously there are, some things that you do need to be aware of and just maybe take more seriously and don't brush under the carpet. So we've got some infographics to share that do list some of the other symptoms of brain tumours, just to make people aware, because you never know. And it's better to have the knowledge than not have it at all. So in about a month it will be my birthday, but I've developed a bit of a phobia surrounding it. But the bar is literally on the floor and couldn't be any lower. So here's hoping that this year we can rewrite the memories and it will be a lot better, inshallah. I just want to finish by saying everyone has their fight, so let's ready our armies and let the battle commence, because we're not going down without a fight. Like, comment, share and subscribe. I've always wanted to say that.